We all know about the porpoising issue. Mercedes have had the most issues with it and become very vocal about the FIA's responsibility to protect the drivers. Now the FIA is making serious rules for it, the other teams and drivers are furious at Mercedes. But is Mercedes and the FIA right? Let's find out in the video. It's a matter of time before we see a major incident. A lot of us can barely keep the car in a straight line over these bumps, said George Russell after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. The Mercedes car was all over the place at the brutally bumpy street circuit, and TV coverage showed Lewis Hamilton nearly losing control of the car in turns 17, 18 and 19. The bouncing was so bad. Even before then though, the drivers had been suffering from the high frequency bouncing the phenomena caused, and the bottoming out that comes with the new ground effect floors. Kevin Magnussen had nerve pain in his arm and jaw after Australia. Carlos Sainz said in Barcelona he was feeling the effect in his neck and back. Gasly said the same after Baku. Ricciardo said, while looking visibly sore in the post-race media pen, that Baku was his first time experiencing bad porpoising and that he feels very sorry for the people that have been experiencing it all year, and he can't speak badly enough about it. He also made some interesting comments about how disorientating it seems to be. He was genuinely rattled, and his head felt like a basketball being dribbled. Ocon said after practice in Baku that it's just painful on the body really, I can feel it on the neck. Schumacher said after having an engine issue due to the porpoising in Baku that it's quite harsh on the body. Ground effect floors have been a feature of race series around the world since they first featured in Formula 1 half a century ago. For much of that time though, the sporting world has been blind to the long-term problems that the participants suffer from. There are a few examples we can bring up here to frame the problems Formula 1 drivers might face in the future. But first, let's tell you about the current research being done into the effects of porpoising. The recent attempt by the FIA to change the technical specifications of the cars for the 2023 season has not gone down well with many teams. The sport's governing body wants to change a number of things on next season's cars in an attempt to reduce the effects of porpoising. The problem is that the teams are already well into the development cycle for next season's cars, and making changes now will take more time than the teams can spare. Christian Horner said, "We need quick clarification on what the rules are for 2023. I hope as early as this week. It's 10 past midnight for next year and Cinderella has already left." Mercedes boss Toto Wolff and his drivers Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have been the loudest voices in favour of rule changes to reduce the effects of porpoising. But then they would be, as their car suffers more than any car on the grid. Their activism in favour of change has been taken very badly by many other teams on the grid, including Ferrari and Red Bull. Wolff suggested that a medical report he was shown in a meeting with Ben Sulayem at the Hungaroring on Saturday was all the evidence he needed to be sure there should be no watering down of the approach. There's all this talk of lobbying in either direction, but I think fundamentally, what are we talking about, he said. The FIA has commissioned medical work on the porpoising. The summary of the doctors is that the frequency of 1 to 2 Hz sustained over a few minutes can lead to brain damage. We have 6 to 7 Hz over several hours. So the answer is very easy. The FIA needs to do something about it. We'll bring you the reaction and opinion of the other team bosses and our opinion on what needs to happen in a moment, but first, let's talk about what this brain damage might actually mean for the drivers and why this medical report does need to be taken seriously. Over the last 10 years, there's been a mounting pile of research into the long-term effects of concussions on athletes across a wide range of sports. Sports-related concussions can have a profound impact on affected individuals' behavior, personality, and mood, as well as upon the lives of loved ones, family, and friends. The mounting evidence suggests that athletes that have sustained repeated head injuries from their sports can increase the risk of developing chronic brain damage leading to potential neurological conditions. Recently, there has been a huge amount of concern about the number of football, or soccer for our American viewers, players who have been suffering from dementia. It's believed that repeated head injuries to players that happen when they hit the ball with their head is causing the shockingly high rate of dementia in football players. In full contact sports, the outlook is far scarier. Rugby's problems run a whole lot deeper. An Imperial College-led study found that 23% of a group of current elite rugby players were playing with axonal injuries or diffuse vascular injury in their brains, while half had unexpected reductions in the white matter volume, akin to the brain's processor. Axonal injury and diffuse vascular injury are both forms of traumatic brain injury that occur from the acceleration and deceleration of the brain inside the skull. This is exactly what happens to drivers in Formula 1 when their cars are porpoising. The brain is not fixed in the skull. A simple way of imagining it is as a ball suspended in liquid inside a slightly larger ball. When you shake them, the smaller ball, which is the brain, hits the edge of the larger ball, the skull, which causes damage to the smaller ball. In Britain, there's currently a class action lawsuit ongoing with 185 rugby union players, aged in their 30s, 40s and 50s, suing rugby's governing bodies. The former players in England and Wales have been diagnosed with early onset dementia and other irreversible neurological impairments, which they claim were caused by playing rugby and receiving repeated blows to the head during their careers. Hopefully now you can fully comprehend the serious and irreversible damage that porpoising and bouncing can do to the brains of Formula 1 drivers. This is a very serious problem that needs addressing now, as Toto Wolff rightly said. But the question is, who should be responsible for protecting the drivers? While Wolff thinks it's a responsibility of the FIA to protect the drivers and wants the FIA to make regulation changes to the cars in 2023 to help stop the bouncing, other team bosses disagree. In our opinion, the other teams see this stance from Wolff as his team refusing to take responsibility for their design mistakes and instead trying to get the rules changed so that they don't have to fix their problems. The FIA are introducing a new test for the Belgium Grand Prix which will punish the teams if they subject their drivers to too much porpoising. The aerodynamic oscillation metric will be measured by accelerometers in the cars over the weekend to ensure that the drivers are not at risk of brain injuries. Any car that exceeds the allowed level of aerodynamic oscillation will have to change their setup to eliminate the bouncing or be disqualified from the race. It is a very hardline stance from the FIA, but the correct one to help solve the problem. Ferrari are of the opinion that the new test will be enough to eliminate the problem and don't think the FIA should make changes to the car rules for 2023. Racing director Laurent Mekies said, "I think we need to be very careful when we speak about safety grounds. There are a few important topics to be discussing in the future, roll hoops or something else. So I think you need to separate that from the discussions we're having with teams, with the FIA, on how to make situations better for the porpoising, and in that context, the TD for Spa is doing a good job. Ferrari aren't the only ones who want the onus to be on the teams to reduce porpoising." Lando Norris said after Baku that he has some porpoising, but it's something you have to deal with, and that I don't think it's anything to complain about. People just need to find ways of fixing it themselves. He also said, "We have some porpoising, some bouncing, but it is what you have to deal with. It's a trade of trying to gain performance, and we can quite easily go lower and gain more performance but have more porpoising. But we just think where we're at is the correct amount. I'm sure the Mercedes could have a much stiffer floor and raise the ride height, and it'd be much nicer for them, but they obviously just don't want to lose the performance. So I don't think it's anything to complain about. People just need to find ways of fixing it themselves." Christian Horner echoed Lando's opinion at Baku as well. He said the teams who have problems with porpoising could solve it by raising their ride height, though doing that would make their cars slower. "You can see it's uncomfortable," he conceded. "There are remedies to that, but it is to the detriment of the car performance. So what the easiest thing to do is to complain from a safety point of view, but each team has a choice. The FIA's introduction of a new test to measure porpoising and punish teams who are not protecting their drivers is in our opinion the right step to take. As Lando says, they are able to reduce the effect, but at the cost of performance. It really comes down to a moral question. Are you willing to risk your drivers' serious long-term health issues for the sake of performance? Toto Wolff seems to believe that the person responsible for answering that question is the FIA and not him. That he's the one with the power to change the car to stop the bouncing. What would you do in Toto's situation? Let us know in the comments down below. Want to know more about what's going on in the world of Formula 1? Then click the link showing on your screen now.